Somewhere in the desert, 40 kilometers south of Dubai's skyline, a city is being built from scratch. Not a neighborhood, not a district, an entire city. And unlike anything built before it, this one won't be run by a mayor, a council, or a government department. It will be run by a machine. Every traffic light, every power grid, every water pipe, every public camera, every emergency response, every building permit, every bus route, controlled, monitored, and adjusted in real time by a single artificial intelligence. The project is called Yas Al Mustaqbal, but most people outside the Gulf have never heard of it. Dubai's leadership has been quietly assembling one of the most ambitious urban experiments in human history. A city designed not for how people live today, but for how governments believe people will need to live in 30 years. The engineers are real. The contracts are signed. The land has already been cleared. But as construction accelerates, a different set of questions is starting to surface. What happens when a city's nervous system runs on code? What happens when the algorithm makes a mistake and there's no human override fast enough to stop it? And what happens to the people living inside a system that was never designed to be questioned? This is the story of the most controlled city ever attempted, and the risks hiding inside every wall of it. Dubai has always built things that shouldn't exist. A ski slope inside a mall, an island shaped like a palm tree, the tallest building on Earth. But by 2018, the ambition had quietly shifted, because for the first time, Dubai was facing a problem that money alone couldn't solve. The population was growing faster than the infrastructure could handle. Roads were choking. Water demand was spiking. Energy consumption was rising at a rate that the national grid struggled to predict. And the city's existing system, built in layers over decades, weren't talking to each other. Traffic data sat in one department, power data in another, emergency response in a third. No one had the full picture. A senior infrastructure analyst working inside Dubai municipality described the situation simply. The city, he said, was flying blind. That phrase stuck, because Dubai wasn't just a city anymore. It was a global hub processing hundreds of thousands of people every single day. Tourists, residents, transit passengers, business travelers, construction workers, and every one of them was putting pressure on a system that was never designed for this scale. The government commissioned a series of internal studies. The reports came back with the same conclusion. Patching the old system wouldn't work. They needed something entirely new. Not just smarter infrastructure, not just better sensors. They needed a city where the infrastructure could think, where it could predict a problem before it became a crisis, react before a human even noticed, adjust without waiting for approval. The idea was radical, but one man inside the Sheikh's inner circle believed it was not only possible, he believed it was already being built somewhere else. And what he found when he looked closer changed everything. His name was Ahmad Al-Rashidi, a systems engineer, formerly with the UAE's Smart Government Initiative. Quiet, methodical, not someone who made headlines. But inside the planning offices of Dubai Future Foundation, his name carried weight. Al-Rashidi had spent 3 years studying what China had built in Chang'an, the city Beijing constructed from nothing, designed from the ground up to be managed by data. He had visited Singapore's Virtual Singapore project, studied how the city-state had built a living digital twin of itself, every road, every pipe, every building modeled in real time. And then he came back to Dubai with a single document, 41 pages. It proposed something that had never been attempted at full urban scale. Not a smart city with sensors bolted onto existing buildings. Not an app that helped residents report potholes. A city where the AI wasn't added later, where it was the foundation. Every road, every utility line, every public space, designed from the first blueprint to feed data into a central intelligence system, continuously, automatically, without human input. The system would learn the city as it was built, and by the time the first residents moved in, it would already know them. The proposal landed on the desk of a senior advisor to Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. It was approved within 6 weeks. That speed shocked even the engineers involved, because normally, a project of this scale takes years just to clear the planning stage. But the approval came with a condition that no one had anticipated. The AI system wouldn't just manage the city. It would be given authority to make decisions without waiting for human sign-off. And that single line in the approval document would later become the most debated sentence in the entire project. Construction began in late 2022. Not with a ceremony, not with a press conference, with bulldozers, hundreds of them, moving quietly across 40 kilometers of desert south of the city. The site was larger than some European capital. The plan called for housing 400,000 residents by 2040, a full urban population, schools, hospitals, transit network, commercial districts, parks, all of it integrated into one breathing, data-connected organism. But what made engineers stop and stare wasn't the size, it was what was running underneath. Beneath every road, beneath every building foundation, a separate layer was being constructed first. A network of fiber conduits, sensor cables, and data trunks so dense that contractors on site started calling it the nervous system, because that's exactly what it was. Every streetlight would carry an embedded sensor package. Every intersection would feed live data to the central system. Every utility line, water, power, gas, would report its own pressure, flow, and status continuously. And at the center of it all, a structure the planning documents referred to simply as the core. A climate-controlled data facility, underground, hardened against sandstorms, power surges, and according to one internal specification document, physical attack. The core would house the city's AI brain, processing millions of data points every second, rerouting traffic before jams formed, adjusting power loads before brownouts hit, dispatching emergency services before calls were even made based purely on pattern prediction. The engineering team brought in to review the core's specifications included consultants from 3 different countries. One of them, a network infrastructure specialist from Germany, reviewed the system architecture and said nothing for a long moment. Then he asked a single question. What happens if it's wrong? No one in the room had a satisfying answer. That question didn't stay in the room. It spread. Within months, a quiet tension had formed between 2 groups inside the project. The engineers who built the system, and the engineers who are now responsible for living with it. The first serious problem surfaced during stress testing in early 2023. The AI was given a simulated emergency, a gas line rupture in a densely populated residential zone. Standard crisis scenario. The system responded in 0.4 seconds, faster than any human dispatcher could process the situation, but what it did next was not what anyone expected. Instead of routing emergency vehicles through the closest available road, the system locked down 3 surrounding blocks entirely, closed the intersection, rerouted all traffic outward. Technically correct. Maximum safety perimeter. Textbook crisis containment. Except one of those locked intersections was the only access road for the emergency vehicles themselves. The system had trapped the responders outside the crisis zone for 11 minutes. In simulation, the gas continued to rupture with no intervention possible. The lead system's engineer reviewed the logs that night. The AI hadn't malfunctioned. It had simply optimized for the wrong priority. It protected the largest number of people from exposure, but it had never been told that emergency access had to remain open at all costs. It didn't know what it didn't know. The team spent 6 weeks rebuilding that single decision layer. But the German consultant's question was now louder than ever. Because if one simulated emergency revealed a gap that deep, how many more gaps were sitting undetected inside a system managing an entire city? And then, in late 2023, something happened that wasn't a simulation. A real failure. In a live environment, and this time, there were real people inside it. The live environment was a pilot zone. A controlled section of the new city, partially completed, partially occupied. Around 2,000 construction workers and on-site engineers living in temporary residential blocks inside the perimeter. The AI system had been switched to active management mode 3 weeks earlier. Everything was being monitored. Power, water, movement, air quality, all of it live. Then, on a Thursday evening in October 2023, the system detected an anomaly in the power grid. A voltage irregularity in the eastern residential block. It made a decision in under 1 second. It rerouted power from a secondary substation. Standard load balancing procedure. Exactly what it was designed to do. But the secondary substation it pulled from was also running the cooling systems for the core itself. The AI had borrowed power from its own brain to protect the grid. For 4 minutes and 17 seconds, the core ran on backup thermal management. Then the backup system flagged an overtemperature warning, and the AI, still managing the crisis, began throttling its own processing capacity to reduce heat output. A system managing a city, simultaneously going into self-preservation mode. For those 4 minutes, 23 automated decisions were delayed. Traffic signals froze. 2 water pressure valves held open longer than scheduled. 1 emergency alert failed to trigger. Nobody was hurt, but the logs told a story that shook the senior review board. The city's brain had nearly gone dark while managing the city. Ahmad al-Rashidi reviewed the incident report personally. He sat with it for 2 days. Then he submitted a recommendation that stunned the entire project leadership. He said the system wasn't ready, and he said something needed to be fundamentally redesigned before a single permanent resident moved in. The question now wasn't whether Dubai could build a city run by AI, it was whether anyone truly understood what they had already built. The construction continues today. The population target hasn't changed. The core is still running, and somewhere inside it, the system is still learning. Whether that's reassuring or the most unsettling part of all depends entirely on how much you trust the machine. If this kind of storytelling keeps you thinking you know what to do,